This happened just last year when I was working night shifts at a downtown hotel front desk in Pittsburgh. I lived about 25 minutes outside the city, and most nights I'd take an Uber back home after clocking out at around 2:30 a.m. It was always quiet at that hour. No foot traffic, barely any cars, just the distant humming of neon signs and the occasional bus hissing to a stop. But what happened one night in mid-November still makes my skin crawl to this day. It was a Sunday morning technically, 2:43 a.m. My usual Uber hadn't shown up, and after 5 minutes, I canceled and rebooked. The new driver's name was Nathan. His profile picture showed a younger guy, maybe late 20s, clean shaven with thick rimmed glasses. He drove a red Hyundai Elantra. Everything looked normal, and the app said he was just a couple blocks away. When he pulled up, I didn't think anything was weird at first. The car was clean. Music was playing softly, some low-fi beat mix. He greeted me with a "Hey, you John?" And I nodded, confirming it was my ride. I slid into the back seat behind the passenger side and buckled up. For the first couple of minutes, it was quiet. He seemed normal, maybe a little tired. I don't like forcing small talk on drivers, so I just stared out the window, watching the orange streetlights blur past. But then, at a red light, he turned around halfway in his seat and said, "You ever see someone vanish into thin air?" I blinked, confused, and said, "Sorry?" He laughed, like this soft, dry chuckle, and repeated himself, "Disappear." Like, not run away, just gone. I awkwardly smiled and said something like, "Can't say I have." That was when I realized we weren't going the usual route. Instead of taking the bridge toward the I-376 ramp, he was coasting through unfamiliar side streets. I checked the app, but the map still showed we were en route. Still, I started watching the road signs more carefully. A few minutes later, he started talking again. "Picked up this girl a couple weeks ago from a bar on Liberty. She sat where you are, right in that spot. But halfway through the trip, I swear to God, she just wasn't there anymore. Just gone." I tried to keep calm, like she jumped out or something. He looked at me in the rearview mirror and smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Nope, door was never opened. I checked the logs. Not even a sound. Just nothing. He paused, then added, "But she left her scarf." I didn't respond. I just shifted uncomfortably in my seat and opened the Uber app again to double-check the address. We were moving further away from the main roads and into a more industrial-looking part of town. Warehouses, fences, closed-off lots. No people. I said, "Hey, this isn't really the way I usually go. Shouldn't we be heading toward the freeway?" He didn't answer. I repeated myself, a little louder, but still, nothing. He kept driving, slower now. The low-fi music had stopped somewhere along the way, and the car was dead silent except for the occasional bump of the tires on uneven pavement. Finally, I said, "I think I'm gonna hop out. You can just let me off here." That's when he locked the doors. I tried to play it off cool. "Hey man, come on. That's not funny." Still no response. I reached forward to grab the door handle on the front passenger side, maybe thinking I could unlock it from there. But before I could, he suddenly turned onto a gravel road that dipped down beside what looked like an abandoned freight warehouse. The kind of place that probably hadn't seen business in over a decade. There were no streetlights here. Just the car's headlights cutting across rusted metal fences and graffiti-tagged walls. He put the car in park and turned toward me slowly. She came back, you know. I was breathing fast now, heart slamming in my chest. What? He leaned closer, just enough that the overhead light caught part of his face. Last night, same spot, same scarf, just smiled at me, didn't say a word. You ever think about how many people vanish in this city and nobody ever really looks for them? That was when I went for the door again, this time slamming my shoulder against it. No luck. Let me out of the car, I shouted, my voice cracking. Right now. He just stared at me for a second. Then, with eerie calm, he reached into the glove box and pulled something out. A small, pale yellow scarf. He held it up between two fingers, like a trophy. Smells like lavender, he whispered. I kicked at the door, started yelling, hoping anyone would hear. But no one was out here. This part of town was dead. I think something in him broke then. He suddenly unlocked the doors and said, "Go, just go." I didn't wait. I bolted out of the car and ran. I didn't look back until I was half a block away. And by the time I did, his car was gone. Not driving away. Not sitting there. Gone. I got to a gas station about a mile away and begged the attendant to call a cab for me. When I opened the Uber app to report the driver, the trip wasn't there. Like it had never been booked. Nathan's profile? Gone too. I filed a report with Uber support the next day, but without the trip log. They told me they couldn't find any record of a ride at that time from my account. To this day, I don't know who or what that man was, but every now and then, I still check the driver profiles when I order an Uber, just in case I ever see that red Elantra again. This happened to a friend of mine named Rami, back in 2019. He was working night shifts at a hospital just outside Albuquerque, New Mexico. As a trauma nurse, his schedule was brutal, 12-hour shifts, 4 nights a week, and he was constantly running on caffeine and fumes. After back-to-back shifts, he'd usually Uber home because he was too exhausted to drive himself. One particular Thursday morning, around 3:15 a.m., he ordered an Uber like he always did. The pickup was at the side exit near the rear wing. He remembered because it was unusually foggy that night. Thick, rolling fog like something out of a horror movie, and the hospital's floodlights barely cut through it. The driver's name was Silas. No profile picture, but the car matched the description. An older black Chevy Impala, the kind that looks like an unmarked police cruiser. It pulled up exactly where the app said it would. Rami got in. From the moment the door shut, he felt off. The interior smelled faintly of mildew and copper. No radio. No idle conversation. The driver just gave him a silent nod through the rearview mirror and pulled off. At first, Rami tried not to think anything of it. It was early. The guy was probably just tired like him. But 20 minutes in, Rami noticed they were still driving through side roads. Not the highway. Not even the main streets. These were rough, cracked 2-lane roads that led out toward the desert. He leaned forward and said, "Hey man, I think you missed the turn for Valencia." No answer. Just silence. No change in speed. No flicker of recognition. The guy didn't even glance in the mirror. Rami opened the app to check the route. No signal. The entire screen was frozen. No ETA. No directions, no connection. Just the spinning icon where the GPS used to be. He looked around outside. Nothing but scrub, brush, and dirt. The fog was thinner out here, but the moon had disappeared behind the clouds. They were miles from any town lights. The only thing out here were these weird telephone poles stretching into the blackness, their wires hanging low like spider webs. "Hey, seriously, where are we going?" Rami asked. The driver slowly raised one hand and pointed ahead, toward a long stretch of road that curved down a sloping hill. As they crested the top, Rami saw something that made his stomach flip. A row of cars. Abandoned, dozens of them. Burned out. Some flipped over. All of them just sitting in the middle of the road like they'd been left in a panic. Before he could say anything, the car slowed to a crawl. That's when he saw them. Figures standing among the wrecks. Motionless. They weren't walking, weren't talking, just standing. Men, women, even what looked like kids. Their skin was pale, and their faces were wrong. No expressions, no blinking, just open mouths like they were all mid-scream, frozen in time. Then one of them turned, slowly, and looked directly at the car, followed by another, and another, all at once, their heads tilted to the same sharp angle, like puppets being yanked by invisible strings. Rami shouted, "Turn around, now!" But the driver didn't move, just stared blankly ahead. Rami grabbed the handle and flung the door open. The car was barely moving now, but he threw himself out, hitting the ground hard and rolling over desert gravel. He scrambled to his feet and sprinted the other direction, not stopping even when his lungs were burning. He didn't dare look back. Eventually, he came to a fence line and climbed over into a junkyard. Hiding behind a rusted-out pickup, he called 911 on his backup phone. This one had a signal. He tried to explain what happened, but the operator kept asking for a nearby intersection. He had no idea where he was. A sheriff's deputy picked him up about an hour later. Rami told him everything, but when they drove back out to where it supposedly happened, no burnt-out cars, no figures, not even the road, just desert brush and a couple of fence posts leading nowhere. And when they checked his Uber ride history, there was no record of a driver named Silas. No ride requested. The trip never existed. To this day, Rami refuses to take Ubers. Says he doesn't care if it's raining or if he's dead tired. He drives himself home every single time. And he avoids that stretch of desert because sometimes when you're out there, the world bends a little and things that don't belong show up. This happened to me in late 2022 when I was living in a small town outside Flagstaff, Arizona. I worked part-time as a pizza delivery driver, and on weekends, I made extra cash driving for Uber at night. Most of the time, it was uneventful. Drunk college kids, tourists headed to cabins, the usual. But then came Halloween weekend. It was a Saturday night, cold as hell, and the town was buzzing with parties. Around 1:30 a.m., I got a request to pick someone up near the outskirts of town. The location was weird, an unlit gravel pull-off near an abandoned rail line. The user's name on the app was just R. No profile photo. 1-star rating. I hesitated, but it was a slow night, and the payout was decent, so I accepted it. I pulled up and idled with my hazards on. shining my headlights into the pitch black beyond the trees. There were no street lamps, no nearby houses, just the sound of wind moving through the pine needles and the occasional creak of something shifting in the dark. I was about to cancel when someone suddenly appeared from the tree line. A man, tall, wearing an old hoodie and jeans soaked from the knees down. His clothes looked worn, almost too worn, like he'd been sleeping outside for weeks. He opened the back door and sat directly behind me without saying a word. "You are?" I asked. Silence. Just the click of the seatbelt. I checked the app. It was him. Destination listed as private address. Somewhere about 20 minutes outside of town, toward the national forest. We started driving. For the first 10 minutes, there was no noise. Just the sound of tires crunching gravel and the low drone of the heater. I tried to make small talk. "Rough night?" He didn't respond. Just breathed slowly, steady, deep. But then I glanced in the rearview mirror and saw he was smiling. Not like a "hey, thanks for the ride" smile. This was wide, crooked, like his face wasn't built to do it right. Then, without moving his head, he whispered, "You ever drive someone who doesn't leave?" I didn't know how to respond. My skin went cold. "What do you mean?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. He repeated the same thing, slower. "You ever drive someone who doesn't get out?" I tried to laugh it off. "Nah, man. Everyone leaves eventually." But he leaned forward suddenly, just enough that I could hear his breath behind my right ear. "Not everyone." I nearly swerved off the road. I glanced at the app again. 10 minutes to go. "Hey, listen," I said. "I think I'm just gonna pull over and cancel the trip. Something's not right here." He didn't respond. So I pulled over near a turnout and put the car in park. "I'm gonna have to ask you to get out, man." Still nothing. Just that grin. And the breath. Then he muttered, "I've been waiting in the dark for a long time." Before I could react, he lunged forward and grabbed the headrest, pulling himself between the seats. His hands were cold, freezing cold, like ice. I slammed my elbow back and connected with his face. He shrieked, not in pain, but in anger, like an animal. I threw the door open and scrambled out, leaving the engine running. But he didn't follow me out. I circled around the back of the car, trying to get distance. And that's when I noticed he wasn't in the back seat anymore. He was gone. The door was still open, the car lights on, but no sign of him. The woods were silent. No footsteps, no rustling, nothing. I grabbed my flashlight from the trunk and shined it into the trees, expecting him to come rushing at me any second. But all I found were footprints in the dirt, leading away from the car, then stopping, mid-stride, like he just vanished into thin air. I drove straight home with all the doors locked and every light on in the car. I didn't even stop to close the back door. I just let it swing shut while I peeled out. I reported the rider to Uber, sent in dashcam footage, everything. A week later, I got an email saying the account had been flagged and permanently removed. But that wasn't the end. A month later, I got another ride request. Same weird area near the abandoned tracks. This time, the name was E. No profile picture. 1-star rating. I declined the ride, and I never drove Uber again. But sometimes, I'll still be scrolling through my ride history, and a name will appear at the bottom of the screen. Just a letter, no face, and it always says, requesting pickup near you.